Catholics preparing to say their final farewells to the first Hispanic bishop of the Brooklyn Diocese. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
A local singer with ties to the Brooklyn Diocese rebuilding her life after losing everything in a fire. I'm Emily Drewby, and that story is ahead.
Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio is mobilizing the diocese to pray for life in the wake of New York State's extreme abortion law.
I'm going to say something that might get me in trouble, but St. Joseph is even more important than St. Patrick.
Today is the feast of St. Joseph, and we'll hear more from Cardinal Dolan about his provocative observation. The news starts right now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Liz Faublas. The people of Brooklyn and Queens are saying their goodbyes to Auxiliary Bishop Rene Valero. He was the first Hispanic to serve as bishop in the diocese. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports from Blessed Sacrament Church in Jackson Heights, where a vigil mass will be celebrated. Tim.
Liz, Bishop Valero served this Queens parish from 1979 until 2005. Today, Catholics he ministered to both in this parish and throughout the Brooklyn Diocese are saying their final goodbyes. As Robert Soto prays next to Bishop Rene Valero's casket, he has fond memories of the Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop.
All my memories of Bishop Valero, all outstanding memories. And it's vivid in my mind. I can still hear him doing the sermons.
Bishop Valero passed away on Sunday, March 10th. He was 88 years old. Hundreds of Catholics visiting Blessed Sacrament Church in Jackson Heights, Queens today to say their final goodbyes. Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Raymond Chiappetto will celebrate this evening's vigil mass with other bishops, priests, and New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan expected to attend. Bishop Valero was born in 1930 and raised in New York. The son of Venezuelan immigrants, he served the Brooklyn Diocese for over 5 decades. One of many assignments, pastor of Blessed Sacrament Church. Marlene Pacar was one of his parishioners.
He was a wonderful person that you can talk to, and he will listen to you and tell you the best advice.
Valero went on to become the Diocese of Brooklyn's first bishop of Hispanic heritage, later working with Catholic Charities, then picked to head the Catholic Migration Office. He was also appointed to lead the Hispanic Apostolate, ministering to Hispanic Catholics throughout Brooklyn and Queens. In 2009, Bishop Valero told Currents News that was an assignment he held dear.
I was very grateful to the Lord for that, because that was the beginning of a real creation of a Hispanic apostolate.
Even after his retirement in 2005, Bishop Valero had a connection to Blessed Sacrament. He returned to Jackson Heights in 2012 when the parish renamed this reception hall after him. Bishop Valero told Currents News what meant more, seeing his parishioners.
Part of the priest's life is to serve his people in a parish, and especially being a pastor, so I miss those days very much. But I'm glad to come back and see them once more.
And they're glad to see him once more, to pay their final respects.
Now that he's passed, of course it hurts, but also it's kind of gladness, thinking that now he's at last is resting in peace.
And again, Brooklyn Auxiliary Bishop Raymond Chiappetto will celebrate the vigil here this evening. Other bishops and Cardinal Timothy Dolan are among the hundreds expected to attend. In Jackson Heights, Queens, Tim Harfman, Currents News. Liz, back to you.
All right, Tim, thank you. A mass of Christian burial for Bishop Valero will be celebrated at the Immaculate Conception Center tomorrow, March 20th at 10:30. Bishop DiMarzio is taking new action in support of the sanctity of life in the wake of New York's extreme abortion law that eliminates virtually all restrictions on the deadly procedure. The diocese is joining the 40 Days for Life campaign, the bishop saying in response to the recent malicious Reproductive Health Act adopted in New York State, I have received dozens of letters and messages from Catholics throughout Brooklyn and Queens who are profoundly shocked by this extremist pro-abortion law. As such, I thought it critical that during the season of Lent, our faithful have a greater opportunity to be part of something that places great emphasis on the value of life. Therefore, I have pledged the diocese support for the worldwide 40 Days for Life campaign, and I'm encouraging a period of prayerful fasting, peaceful vigil, and education to take place in the name of the unborn. The Brooklyn Diocese has published resource materials relating to the 40 Days of Life campaign online at dioceseofbrooklyn.org/marriage/marriage-and-family. An update on Cardinal Daniel DiNardo. He is alert and resting comfortably in a Texas hospital after suffering a mild stroke on Friday. The president of the U.S. Bishops' Conference is said to be eager to resume his duties. He's also Archbishop of the Houston-Galveston Archdiocese, and church officials say the cardinal is talking with his doctors and thanking everyone for their prayers. A massive black cloud is overshadowing the area around Houston today. It's smoke from a dangerous chemical fire that's been raging for days. Kristen Holmes has the latest.
Plumes of heavy black smoke filling the air in suburban Houston.
The fire did intensify overnight
as a fire at a petrochemical storage facility rages on. Tanks filled with gas, oil, and other chemicals ablaze since Sunday, with no end in sight.
We're doing everything we can to keep it cooled, keep foam going on it, bring in those resources that are needed, and it may burn itself out. So we don't know what that timeline is.
Tuesday, a lifting of the shelter-in-place order as schools and businesses reopened, despite concerns from health officials of the possible effects on air quality.
Sometimes I worry when they say no health effects are expected. Well, they're really talking about acute, immediate health effects, and we may still see some of those.
The fire started at Intercontinental Terminals Company in Deer Park Sunday. They say it's safe to go outside.
We continue to monitor the air quality. We're working with CTEC. We're also working with EPA. They actually flew a plane through the plume the last couple of days. They're still within safe levels.
ITC releasing test results indicating the conditions are below levels that cause health concerns.
We would never do anything that is wrong to hurt our environment.
But some residents remain uneasy.
Last night was really bad, and it was kind of, hard to breathe a little bit.
Kristen Holmes, Currents News.
West Virginia's Attorney General has sued a Catholic diocese and a bishop in connection with clergy abuse allegations. Bishop Michael Bransfield and the Diocese of Charleston-Wheeling were named in the complaint from Attorney General Patrick Morrisey. The suit questions the assignment of priests who had been accused of abuse. The defendants have not yet responded. Bransfield retired as bishop of the diocese last year. French Cardinal Philippe Barbarin said Pope Francis did not accept his resignation when they met yesterday at the Vatican. The Archbishop of Lyon was convicted this month of failing to report sexual abuse allegations. He insists he's innocent and is appealing the verdict. The Cardinal said Francis cited the presumption of innocence in rejecting Barbarin's resignation. President Trump used a White House press conference with Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro to renew his call for the ouster of Venezuelan strongman Nicolas Maduro.
We call on members of the Venezuelan military to end their support for Maduro, who is really nothing more than a Cuban puppet, and finally set their people free.
The administration publicly supports Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido. In addition to discussing the Venezuela crisis, Trump and Brazil's Bolsonaro also talked about trade and security issues. Catholic support for the president is mixed, according to a new poll by Pew Research. Overall, Trump currently has a 36% approval rating nationwide 2 years into his presidency. Among white Catholics, 44% say they support him. That's down from 52% when he took office. Among non-white Catholics, 26% of those surveyed said they backed the president. That's double the 13% who expressed approval in 2017. When Pope Francis visits Romania in late May, he hopes to set off a spiritual wind that will blow from the east and into Europe. The pontiff will also try to rebuild chilled relations between Romania's Catholic and Orthodox communities. The Holy Father has worked throughout his papacy to increase inter-religious dialogue. In Romania, he'll be in a land where over 80% of the population is Eastern Orthodox, and Catholics account for less than 5%. Here to talk more about Pope Francis's plan to thaw Orthodox relations is national correspondent for the Tablet and Crux, Christopher White. Christopher, thank you so much for being here with us. Now, we know that the Pope does not travel arbitrarily. So what is the significance of Pope Francis deciding to visit a country with so few Catholics?
Liz, I think we've known Pope Francis as the Pope of the peripheries. He likes to go to places that we don't necessarily think of that he would travel to. And what we're seeing with him going to Romania is that he's going to a place where less than 5% are Catholic, and he wants to let them know they're not alone, that he has their back, he's there with them.
Let's talk about the numbers. There is a larger Eastern Orthodox presence in Romania than a Catholic one, which you just stated. What is the current status of Catholic and Orthodox relations?
Liz, back in the 90s, Pope John Paul II was quite close with the Patriarch at the time. However, following his death, those relationships have suffered. And what Pope Francis really wants to do is sort of, give them a shot in the arm, help them sort of pray together, go to each other's religious services so that they can be one body.
Now, besides this ecumenical relations aspect of it, what else can we expect the Pope to touch on during this very short trip, actually?
Yeah, I think we're going to hear the Pope talk a lot about a rejection of a consumeristic culture. There's a lot of corruption in Romania, and I think he wants to address that. And also the plight of migration, as it's sort of been a very sort of busy conduit of flow of migrants into Europe. So I think those are going to be two other pressing concerns on this trip.
Is this the kind of trip you think Pope Francis is going to be taking more over the course of this year?
Yeah, I think we're going to see a number of these sort of popcorn trips to sort of pop into these countries. So I think, lots of that to look forward to.
All right, Christopher, thank you. That's a great way to put it. Always great to have a conversation with you. Today is the Feast of St. Joseph, and New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan is celebrating by releasing a video message on Twitter.
It's March 19th, and it's the Feast of St. Joseph. Listen, I'm going to say something that might get me in trouble, but St. Joseph is even more important than St. Patrick, all right? We just all celebrated his feast day over the weekend, a really important one for us here in New York since he's the patron of the cathedral in the Archdiocese. But St. Joseph is the foster father of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
St. Joseph is the patron saint of fathers, refugees, families, and he is also the protector of the Church. Today is also the feast day of retired Pope Benedict, formerly known as Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger of Germany before adopting the papal name Benedict. According to Vatican Radio, he celebrated the day quietly. There's a lot more news headed your way. A Christian singer who's been a contributor to the Brooklyn Diocese is counting on her faith to overcome a tragedy. An expert will be here to explain why Catholic colleges do well at March Madness time. A Catholic refugee admits immigration is tough for migrants and the countries that welcome them. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. A singer who's contributed her talents to the Brooklyn Diocese is overcoming a family disaster by relying on her faith. Currents News' Emily Druby has that story.
Some days I try my best.
Kielanda Rembert is writing a new song.
Jesus is my refuge.
Pulling inspiration from one of the toughest moments of her life.
A month ago, a fire happened in my home.
On February 23rd, the apartment Kielanda shared with 6 other family members erupted in flames. The family and their 3 pets made it out safe, even taking time to alert their neighbors to the fire, but their apartment was destroyed.
It was something that was very unexpected, something nobody could really truly prepare for, and so it pushed my family and I out of our home. And so right now we're just displaced, trying to figure out what to do next.
In addition to losing their home, they lost all their possessions. God in music helping the Rembert family through this trying time.
We haven't sunk too low because we know that God has a plan and we're trusting him with where he's going to lead us.
God has truly had each and every one of us at peace. He's in control, so none of us are complaining. We're just taking it one day at a time.
The family is Christian. Music has always been a part of Kielanda's life. Back in 2017, she wrote and performed the popular song Put Him on Your List for DeSales Media Group's Christmas campaign of the same name, which urged Catholics to go to church during Christmas time.
But Jesus is the one we can't He's the forget. One we can't forget. Why don't you put him on your list this Christmas?
A month after the devastating fire, the Rembert family is now rebuilding. They're living in a hotel while they search for their next home, but still, God gives them hope.
It's hard to realize what we've lost, but we know that that's not where our story ends. We're going to keep moving forward and seeing what God does.
A GoFundMe has been set up to help the Rembert family on their new journey. It can be found at gofundme.com/therembertfamily. In Manhattan, Emily Druby, Currents News.
The Trump administration wants to put a lid on student loan borrowing. Now undergrads are limited to what they can get in federal loans during their academic careers, just over $57,000. But there's no cap for parents or graduate students. The White House is encouraging Congress to impose restrictions. Current student loan debt nationwide has reached nearly $1.5 trillion. The University of Southern California is raising its tuition. Starting this fall, it will cost $57,000 a year. This comes as a massive college admissions bribery case shakes up college campuses nationwide, USC included. College basketball's national championship tournament season, known as March Madness, gets underway today. This year, St. John's, Iona, and other Catholic schools across the country will be playing. Now, here's a fun fact that a lot of people may not know. Traditionally, the Catholics do very well in the men's competition. Joining us now is Clemente Lisi, who writes for the website Religion Unplugged. Clemente, thank you so much for being here. I just want to go ahead and get this out of the way. All right, shameless plug. I'm a St. John's alum, so you know I'm praying hard for this right now, okay? The phenomenon of Catholic schools actually achieving success in the tournament, it dates back decades. There have been a lot of winners over the years. What is behind this success?
Well, what people told me for my piece when I was working on it was that these schools are mission-oriented, and they start out in really urban areas, New York, Chicago. So as you see, college football is big in the South, and places like that with a lot of space and room. Basketball really grew in urban areas like New York, Chicago, New Orleans. And so as a result, Catholic schools have been really, really good at basketball over the decades. And we've seen that with Villanova, for example, who won the championship 2 out of the last 3 years.
And speaking of Villanova, a professor at that Catholic school makes the point that where Catholic schools are located, location has a lot to do with its success. You talked a little bit about that, but expound a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so what people were telling me was that they're mission-oriented. They really want to help students. So Villanova's a really good example. Villanova, Jay Wright, their coach, creates a family environment there. It's very faith-based. These Catholic schools really live their faith in their basketball teams. And so I think alums of these schools can tell you the same thing, that yes, faith in God and Jesus is a really big part of the team. And even though the students are not Catholic themselves, but they sort of are all on board with this message. And I think it creates a unity.
And we have to mention Villanova captured the national crown last year. So I'm going to ask you to put on the hat to the dismay. Exactly. I was not very happy, but you know what? Give credit where credit is due.
Correct.
Can they repeat?
They can. They're a number 6 seed. They had a pretty difficult regular season, but they really pulled through when the games counted. They won the Big East tournament. They beat Seton Hall, another Catholic school. And so now I think they're one of those teams that can do it.
I literally cannot have this conversation with you without asking, do you think St. John's has a winning shot at this?
Look, getting all the way to the Final Four will be extremely difficult. It would be the ultimate Cinderella story. It's possible. I think all New York will be pulling for them. They're a number 11 seed if they win the play-in game on Wednesday night. If they do that, they beat Arizona State. Anything can happen, as you know. People filling out their brackets now will tell you that often picking the number 1 seeds doesn't work out in the end. So anything can happen.
All right, well, they have a Catholic anchor pulling for them, so hopefully that works.
And a whole city.
And a whole city as well. Now, there are 68 teams in the tournament. Which one is your favorite to watch?
That's interesting. So I think Gonzaga, another Catholic school, I have to give them a plug. This is a 20th straight NCAA tournament. They've grown over the decades into a number 1 seed, and you can still have a Gonzaga-Villanova final, which would be an all-Catholic final, which is very possible.
Clemente, we have about 30 seconds left. You've been covering this for quite some time. Anything ever surprise you, or do you expect a surprise perhaps this time around?
That's the only thing is not surprising, is I expect a surprise. So I'm not in the prediction business. I know I gave you this sort of all-Catholic final that could happen, but anything could happen. You got to watch the games. On paper, everyone looks good until the games are actually played and things actually happen.
All right. Very unbiased, and I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Clemente. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Go St. John's.
Thank you.
The Supreme Court made it easier today to detain immigrants with past criminal records. They ruled immigration officials can take non-citizens into custody indefinitely and without a bond hearing, even after they've completed sentences for criminal convictions. The justices were divided 5-4 in the victory for the Trump administration. A Catholic refugee who has met with Pope Francis is admitting immigration is very difficult for the migrants seeking a better life and for the nations that provide them welcome. In this man's case, he was fleeing an African war. Melissa Butts reports.
Since the 1990s, a civil war has been present in Cameroon between those who speak English in the southwest of the country and the French majority. Additionally, corruption, electoral fraud, and problems with Nigeria and Boko Haram have put the country in an almost permanent war. Thus, residents have fled the country and gone to Europe. Frank is one of them.
What is in Cameroon? Well, if you go, there are problems. You can go as you please, but if you ask questions as a journalist or political activist, you can find problems. So those who work as journalists for Europonane or other papers have a lot of trouble.
Thus, he escaped from his home country by plane, not even knowing where he was going. He said he came to Italy by chance after a rough trip.
The traffickers gave us a fake passport. But I don't know what it was used for, because they made us enter the cargo hold, where they put the bags. It was an 8-hour flight and it was so cold inside. We arrived literally frozen.
His life quickly turned around when he found Centro Estali. The center welcomes refugees in Rome and helps them integrate into society. Frank also had the opportunity to meet Pope Francis through the center. Yet the process of inserting himself into the Italian culture was a bit difficult.
The first thing is to forget everything you've done in Cameroon. Education, diplomas, graduation, forget it all. Here you do whatever you can find. My wife came here too. We're trying to start again.
Now he and his wife live just outside of Rome, where he works as an assistant for the elderly, helping them in their daily tasks. While it might be a long way from his work as a journalist in Cameroon, at least he feels free to work as he pleases. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
Still to come on Currents News, what Pope Francis is telling Catholics to do more of this Lenten season, and how this robot is helping a high school student with disabilities continue his education. We'll be right back. Pope Francis is urging Catholics to be more generous during the Lenten season by opening their hearts and their pocketbooks.
Non siate tasche chiuse. Siate generosi nel dare ai poveri, a coloro che hanno bisogno, e anche dare tante cose, dare dei consigli, dare dei sorrisi alla gente, sorridere. Sempre dare, dare.
The Holy Father stressed that almsgiving is a medicine that helps us become more merciful. A high school student with disabilities is back in his Ohio school with the help of some new technology. Jimmy Humphreys is able to continue his education via video stream from his home through this technology that permits him to see and hear everything in the classroom. He likes to call the device the Jimmy Bot. Humphreys has multiple disabilities, including a visual impairment that requires him to stay at home.
When I stopped going to school, I noticed a real downhill slope from not interacting with people. So now that I'm back interacting with people, it really has changed my whole attitude.
The Jimmy Bot was donated to the high school by Ohio State University. Good for them. That is Currents News. I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for joining us, because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.